Welcome to New Day Northwest. Okay, so one of the country's leading experts in sports psychology and mental conditioning has roots in Pierce County. Bob Moawad was a peak performance consultant for companies like Boeing and NASA. His son Trevor has taken his father's teachings to a new level, working with high-profile companies, teams, and elite athletes, including the quarterback of your Seattle Seahawks, Russell Wilson. And the same focus skills number 3 uses on the field can help the rest of us as well. Please welcome from Moawad Consulting Group mental conditioning expert Trevor Moawad. Come on out. Hi. It's good to meet you. How are you doing? Come on in and sit down. So what an exciting field to be in, right?
It is. It's a very unique industry and one that's it works well for me, particularly if you get in at 4 a.m. from a flight traveling from across the country. It challenges me to practice what I preach.
Exactly.
But I'm excited to be here.
I'm glad you are, and thank you for making it. So let's talk first of all about your dad, because he was a real pioneer in this field. Tell me more.
You know, he was raised in the southern part of Washington in Kalama, and was a teacher and an educator and a great athlete, played at Central Washington University.
There he is.
And ultimately, he wanted to transition out of teaching into teaching the broader principles of how do we get out of our own way, how do we think more productively, and ultimately increase our personal effectiveness. So he started a company, or got involved with a man named Lou Tice in the early 70s in a company called the Pacific Institute, and then in the early 80s formed his own company and really just traveled around maximizing the human asset, which is allowing people to change their inner thoughts, which ultimately change what they see outside, you know, starting with their habits and ending with their overall outcomes.
So what was it like growing up as the son of a guy who had these kinds of expectations and who taught you, I presume, these same skills growing up? What difference has it made in your life?
Well, it's made a huge difference. I think in a similar way that Peyton Manning or Eli Manning benefited growing up, Archie Manning sort of engineered to become a great quarterback. When I went to bed at night, I would say affirmations and reminders. I would listen to tapes of Zig Ziglar and Brian Tracy, and really one of the things I think when we think about the field of peak performance, so much of it comes down to thinking about positive thinking, and it really isn't. That is probably one of the bigger turnoffs, because a lot of times it's tough to be positive. It's tough to be positive when it's 110 degrees and you're trying to compete physically. It's tough to be positive in certain financial situations, or when we're battling health challenges or divorce. What I was really taught was to learn the value of non-negativity. We really didn't spend much time watching the news. We didn't listen to country music. We didn't listen to a lot of things.
You didn't want to hear about people leaving, being left, and having their dog taken.
As great as titles like "How Come All My Children Look Like My Best Friend," we didn't really go there. So I really learned the value of the discipline it takes to not be negative, because the reality is we don't know if positive thinking works all the time, but we can confidently say that negative thinking does, and it works negatively.
Yeah, for everybody, no matter what you're doing.
So that was a great way to grow up, and I'm very appreciative of that type of environment.
So in your work now, obviously you're working with some amazing people. Are they athletes mostly, or people across all kinds of fields?
Well, for me, being in this industry for 16, 17 years now, which is, you know, I started out as an educator and a teacher and made my efforts to be a pro soccer player. Now I sort of pick and choose. I try to focus on the best athletes, the best organizations, and I also work in the special operations community and try to focus on people who are really, really close to getting to that next level.
Wait, hold on a second. The special operations community as in special ops military guys?
Correct.
And women. That's pretty fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
So you're already working with people who are performing at a pretty high level, correct?
Correct.
So then you want to dial it up some. So when you're working with somebody like Russell Wilson, he's so talented and gifted in so many ways. How do you work on taking him, up another notch?
Well, systemically, when you look at an athlete's career, particularly if we look at pro football, what we're seeing is about 1 out of every 5 players is making it to a 4th year in the NFL. It's a very, very difficult league. You're talking the top 1% of 1%. And what people don't understand is when you get to that level, you understand that the edges that you can get are very, the margin for error is small.
Right.
So whether it's how you eat, how you think, how you train, how you compete. So with Russell, when he came to Bradenton, Florida, to the sports academy I worked at, I oversaw everything that related to athlete development. So the orthopedic, the sports psychology, we did improv training for athletes, we did the nutritional components. I oversaw all those things. And at that point, getting ready for the NFL draft, it was about putting the best plan that was going to allow him to run fast, to interview well, and to show that 5'10" is only a limit if you let it be a limit, and to bring his best foot forward. So over the years, really what we've worked on is just planning to get behind. My dad used to always say, when you form a habit, that habit forms you, good or bad. And really the best people in the world are a collection of great habits. And I think we've seen with athletes like Tiger Woods, if you get away from those habits, no matter what your aptitude is, you're going to be average or below average. So with Russ, every year it's about just sustaining great habits. He understands that he doesn't need to be sick to get better. He's won more games than anybody in the history of pro football in his first 4 years. And every offseason, 2 years ago it was down in San Diego, this year it was in LA. It's just about where should we be eating, training, who are the best people to be around, and as good as we are, how do we get better? And that's kind of the support we do. It's not, there's nothing broken, everything's about continuous improvement.
Right. I love the fact that he's so committed despite being so excellent, that's a process that you continue to do. You don't get to a plateau and then say, all right, I've arrived, no need to work on this anymore. You mentioned improv. What does that involve for an athlete?
Well, you know, one of the things that you're seeing in young athletes, and you're seeing in a lot of this generation now, is just struggling with basic human performance skills and just basic, the ability to, hi Margaret, how are you? Technology has been a challenge, also an opportunity. So one of the things over the years we've tried to incorporate at programs like the University of Alabama, Florida State University, and with great athletes is if actors have an ability to get trained to be comfortable in front of audiences and challenge each other and laugh with each other, not laugh at each other, how can we use those same experts to help a challenged environment that we're dealing with kids who are missing some of the basic fundamentals because of text messaging, social media, spending 8 hours a day looking at our phones in some cases. So we use those experts to help build our locker room, build our chemistry, and we think that you can learn from the best people in that field to help us get better. If you work in pro sports or college sports, and let's say you have 100 players, the natural inclination is to focus on the problems. And the Pareto principle, the 20% that take up 80%. If you focus on the challenges, these guys don't communicate well, they don't understand, they don't work well together, 2 years later you're going to get fired. And I've been in locker rooms multiple times when we've been fired. So everything's about solving problems. If you're at the University of Alabama and you just won a national championship, the only thing people care about is what are you going to do now? So if you have a group of people, or think in terms of the business perspective, if our culture, we're not getting along, we're not getting the best out of people, the statistics now are 4 hours of productivity per 8.5 hour workday. And if an employee is dealing with an emotional issue, or financial distress, or divorce, or a health challenge, that statistic drops down to 1.5 hours of productivity per day.
Businesses obviously care about that. Let's talk about individuals, all of us sitting in this room. You know, 1, 2, 3 tips that we could start using from what you've learned to improve our own lives today, preferably.
Well, I think successful people do what unsuccessful people don't like to do. And first of all, whatever we do, and from a business perspective, I need to understand what it is that people in my field do to succeed. So a lot of it is not being ignorant relative to the things that it's going to take. So in business, it might be building a pipeline and my marketing strategy. I think in health, the exercising platform. But what specifically can I do to get to that next level? So understanding those things and understanding the habits that it takes to succeed. I think the second thing is really becoming aware of our internal voice. You know, if I ask this audience of you know, 20 people in here, how many of you talk to yourself? Probably 15 said, I think I talk to myself, and the other 5 are like, I don't know. Do I talk to myself? As they talk to themselves. That voice is your marketing campaign. It drives you. It's It's Russell in the NFC Championship that no matter what was happening, 1 interception, 2 interception, 3 interception, 4 interception, his ability to continue to believe that I control what happens next, that voice is extremely powerful, and we don't give enough power to it. So when I just finished up at UCLA, Alabama, and Florida State in the last 3 days with the college football world, we don't focus, as we prepare for the summer, on positive thinking. We work to master the value of non-negative thinking. We don't allow people to verbalize negativity. We don't verbalize complaints. We don't talk about the heat. And you'd say, well, isn't it more important to be positive? I think we think positive is one end, negative is the other spectrum. Positive has its own spectrum, and negative has its own spectrum. It's like a crowd. If I'm walking down a street and there's 50 people booing, 50 people cheering, the booing is the negative, and the cheering is the positive. If I be more positive and the booing stays the same, I don't get rid of it. So really for us, it's all about reducing the booing, which is what I verbalize negatively out loud, and then I actually don't need to be as positive. And in fact, non-negative thinking is significantly more power than positive thinking. And when people ask me about Russell Wilson, that's what's most impressive about Russell, is no matter what the circumstances are, he's never negative. And when I would pick him up in San Diego and we'd go work out, you walk in, the music he's listening to, it's inspirational, and all the words he says, and he doesn't let himself go to the obvious outcomes. I'm not playing well, this isn't going well. It's all about what can I do to change my circumstance going forward.
And
I didn't teach him that.
Right?
And we can all do that.
We can all do that.
We all control what we say out loud, Margaret, and there are times where it's not easy to be positive, but we can always be non-negative. And I think that that's the biggest thing, understanding the habits it takes to succeed, and more importantly, really listening to that inner voice and not allowing ourselves to go negative when we speak externally.
I love that. Thank you so much for visiting with us.